All right, cyber traders, welcome on back here this Tuesday, post Traders Talk edition, pre-on-site edition. How about that of our afternoon meeting? Great to see Chuck and Wendy still here with us this afternoon. Alongside, I'm sure a lot of us, though, actually, if you're not in on the SLNO, perhaps you were just kind of more of an observer on the sidelines, but it has been a phenomenal trade altogether here thus far, alongside a few other trades. It's been a really great day, really from beginning from pre-market up until this very moment. So great to see John, Leda, Chuck, have a couple members chatting me on the side from just before, Alex, Charles, Thomas just now. So great to see all of us here. And of course, all of us back on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, etc. Hey, I love days like today. It goes to show at least that even with the market dropping, and I mean dropping, really tanking from the gap down we had this morning up until right now, new low of the day. SPY looks to be on the way down towards 425. But hey, that goes to show that we could still make money on the way up, even in a down market. So I'm a little verklempt right now. Pardon me with that. We got our on-site course coming up tomorrow and Thursday. I flew back from New York, flew back to New York from Florida. I'm actually in my parents' house right now. So, obviously visiting some family, some friends later on, but I'm on a laptop actually. So I'm only on one screen. I'm working remotely on this computer here that you could see. This is my main computer in Florida. Actually, I have Google Remote Desktop. So I'm on one screen actually, but tapped into two computers. So let's see if I can get this right. Do it in one shot here. Let's go right from top to bottom. What we'll do is really just go right from top to bottom and build up our watch list here. Hey, needless to be said, SLNO to begin. We're going to put this back on our watch list for right now. You would think that at a psychological level, like $30, much like you could have said the same at 20, perhaps, that would be a major level of resistance for this to top off at, and that's it. Well, just before there was an iceberg at 30. So, I'd called that out just before. One of our members, Thomas, was asking about that. Just, hey, like, why 30? And I answered him in private chat just on the side, went over it with him a small bit. But actually, before, let's see if it's still there. Let's see if it's still there. Again, I'm doing this just kind of on a different setup here today, so pardon me if it's a little sloppy. But otherwise, I saw it $45. This was from a little earlier today, maybe even $46. There is like a decent sized order out there here on this SLNO. Let's see if I can go back here a bit. It's not sticking out as much right now. It popped up only for a moment, then the order got pulled. So it led me to think, like, in the complete rare event where this just keeps chugging on along across the afternoon, breaks over 30 perhaps even. It would be pretty crazy if it ended up moving all the way up to $46. So I wrote that in the chat board. Don't hold your breath. Holding your breath is dangerous for one's health. But otherwise, though, what's not dangerous is setting a stop and being hopeful. So if this ends up continuing to push on up, hey, that would be crazy. I ended up getting out on half the last trade I just took. I was writing Chuck earlier in the chat board. I wanted 25.50 as a pullback level. Didn't get it. Just moved right on up higher. So I moved my support up higher and I said 26.75. And right there, as it pulled back there prior to 215, it led to a nice entry. It ended up bottoming out pretty much right there. And now is like a big moment of truth. Do we get a lower high or a higher low? Lower high, higher low. Right now, it's kind of in the middle of both. So hey, during this meeting, this thing might tank. For my sake, I hope it doesn't. I got my stop set at least, but I have this on the side on Bookmap. So if this ends up actually going the other way, completely popping back on up, I'll come back to it during this meeting. But hey, I'd said just before, that's not the only stock that we did well on from earlier today. The Femi trade, and it looks like it's still pretty active here. Looks rather choppy, but more from pre-market. This thing made a great move early on from $1 up to $1.30. Ended up actually from that point getting really crazy. So, once this pulled back and tanked, I completely wrote this off. I was not expecting this to make another move back up. Well, not only did it make one bounce, it made not just two bounces, it made like three real bounces on the morning where you could have gotten about like 15, 20 cents a pop. And we're talking for $1 stock. That's pretty crazy. That's a nice return. So to have that actually 3, 4 times across the morning, even just there as it's now moving back on up a little bit here, normally a stock this low flow trading this much volume where it normally doesn't, it's gonna just tank, right? We know that with the CCG trade from last week. We know that from RNAS this week. We're going to get familiar with that on SLNO, I bet you. That's for sure. If it's not going to break over 30 soon enough. Do I put this on our main list here for the afternoon? It's trading a hell of a lot of shares a minute. That's 75,000 shares a minute this thing is. For right now, he'll make the cut. Hopefully more eyes even catch on to this trade and not in the downward direction. Just hopefully another higher low building here, another pop. But again, that's kind of being hopeful at this point. There's not as much confidence, it's just kind of the activity on it, which allows me to say, all right, we'll give it a stab at it so far. What we're not going to give a stab at here is this DMK. We're going to move on from that and move on from IMVT. Nice mover from this morning. Actually, join us tomorrow at our on-site course, if not in person, then over the webcast, the webcast version as well, on top of being there in person. I'll go over that IMVT trade. That was a huge runner from earlier today. It was if like there was no ending to that trade, but it ended up topping off like little around $40, $41. It looks like the run is done though for the meantime here. Buyout. Let me keep it moving. Bullfrog, BFRG, right? Ended up having a nice little pop earlier, but man, we did really well on this stock earlier in the year with the other AI trades. It didn't really move nearly as well as it did back then. So, once you got that feel, once you got the hint there a little bit, which was pretty early on, made a nice bounce that Bullfrog, but I wasn't taking part in it. If you made money on it, it worked out in your favor, hopefully. ROIV, nice little mover from the morning here too. I'll tell you, on a day like today, even with the market down, I mean, you do have some ETFs littered in here, just kind of in between, like the UVXY we'll get to, SQQQ with the market down. HUYA up a little bit here. Cosmo back up again. Kind of just a slow, stagnant move up, though. I mean, we've seen that do a lot better. All right, what else we got here? What else we got? We got ARDX. Here's the VIX ETF, LABU. So here's all of our ETFs here. This thing's not doing anything right now. UVXY is doing a lot of something. All right, so UVXY definitely put back on our watch list as the SPYs, obviously at the low of the day. We said that just before, but that's a better correlation right there. UVXY inverse to the market. Same with SQQQ. This is more expensive and moving slower even. So honestly, I mean, hey, this is tradable. If you prefer SQQQ and you trade that, then stick with it. I'm not gonna tell you to change habit there, but UVXY is more bang for your buck. I think more volatile, a little cheaper. It's as tradable, I'd say. All right, so I think maybe like one or two more others here, if I may. I think the Rivian trade, I was saying earlier, is just pretty choppy though for like mid-afternoon, where you normally expect chop. Well, this was pretty flat around the 22.30, dropped down towards the VWAP price even a bit, but there's still a chance to see Rivian try and go higher. It's up over 5%. If the markets end up bottoming out, get a tiny little squeeze up into the close, that would actually go a long way for a trade like Rivian, which is kind of somewhat near the highs still. Has a little ways to go, but I'll come back to this if I need to, the Rivian. I'll come back to this at the end. All right, so I bet you we'll find a lot more on the loser side. Let's see what we got here. Well, hey, we talked about one of them just before, Arnaz. We cannot stress this enough, folks. This is like day one, sentence number one in our classes and in Fausto's free webinars. Even if you're not a student, you keep taking Fausto's free stuff. It's like the first thing he says. Like, you can't turn a day trade into an overnighter. And granted, we do say this here in this trading room of ours. 95% of what we call out, Fausto and myself, is a day trade call out. And we'll tell you for swing trading something. I'm looking for a swing trade on AMD once we get a solid bounce within the market. Once Bitcoin eventually crashes down towards 23,000, I'm looking for a swing trade on Coinbase and Mara. For something like this Arnaz that was up like 300+% yesterday, it should be common sense. And I know 99.9999% of us don't hold on to a stock like this overnight, but we care about 100% of us, not 99.99999. So we want to reiterate that statement over and over to make sure no one gets stuck holding a bag like this overnight. As soon as the market closed up, this thing got clobbered and then some into the morning here today. So, again, same thing's going to happen on IMVT. Same thing is going to happen on SLNO, FEMI, uh, all of those. Was it the other one? DVT, whatever, DMT, DMK it is, whatever. I'm on a tiny screen here also. So I gotta squint here right now as I'm going through this meeting, reading all these stocks on this tiny font here that I got. For you, it might not be tiny actually. For me, it is. All right. So what I'll tell you is a good short for right now as we continue to go along the UNFI. I'd called this out earlier, just a little late to the party, perhaps, but there's still room here. Dropped off a little after I'd called it out. So, perhaps even more to come. Uh, Order book, just be careful of. It does have a spread at times here and there, just definitely thin volume, thin tier size as well. So, just nice drop off, right? For as much down as it is, it's easy to borrow. I did think that there could have been more room on the way down here as well, heading into the afternoon. So good to see it back at the lows here. Also, don't want to forget about MLGO. MLGO, we ended up doing really well on back from the end of last week. But again, goes to show that's like, a stock up 200, 300%. You cannot expect any more than like a day's worth of a pop, and then from there, just for it to completely fall off. This ended up breaking way lower than it even started its run from. All right. So definitely, folks, I'll need your help here. Let me know if there's anything else looking good here on the way down as a short, actually, as well as on the way up. But just with the way the markets are moving, just if there's any good shorts that you got here for me, not cargo or chino. I'm talking stocks, shorts. Um, let me know. Yeah, Dish here down over 7%. Looks pretty damn good, actually. So this I could easily put on our watch list right now. Is this at all-time lows? 601, is that the low there back from June? Yeah, that looks like an all-time low to me. That looks like an all-time low to me. All right, so there is no historical support on this trade. Looks a little slow, but I mean, that's like the icing on the cake there. The fact that there's no real bottom on this outside of like the order book, looking at what's out there on level 3 and level 4, there's definitely some orders out there, some volume. It's not like a low float stock. Obviously, everyone knows Dish. So, with everyone going to streaming lately, it's not a surprise that they're getting crushed, and they have been for a long time. But yeah, I mean, even with the big orders that you see here, this could still be a fairly steady short going into the close, or maybe even a pretty fast short heading into the final 30 minutes. All right. So, you know what, folks? Let me know. Just check. I'm going to check in with the chat board right now. That'll go to YouTube, Facebook Live, all of our streams right there. If you wanted to join Ron and John, Rod and Wendy and Chuck and all of us here, myself, inside our live trading room, just scan that QR code on the top left if you're joining us on YouTube or any of our streams. Ron saying SLNO crazy spreads. Could not agree anymore there. That's a level 5 stock through and through. I think even when Fausto was saying it's like went from a 3 to a 4, I was like, that's a 5. In pre-market even where you can't even set a damn stop. Like, that's like on a crazy spread, and even got larger as it ran up here today. Goes to show I even just got stopped out on the remaining part of my position there. So, if it's not going to break any higher, there's only one other way this thing is going to go, especially with it up five. All right, I got to squint here a little bit. Is that 516%? I didn't even realize that was a 5. I thought that was a 3. It was a 3 maybe a couple hours ago. Holy smokes. This thing's up over 500% today. And it was up even more before. So, uh, yeah, big trees fall hard. Remember that. That's our lesson for this past week. I mean, every day pretty much here with us, join us live. But this whole week, past week, RNAS, MLGO, CCG, perhaps this coming up. Swing trading is risky in this bear market. It is. I mean, especially with the gaps, right? So that's where you want to make sure once you have a gap down, it's like, oh, shit. All right. Well, if my support level got broken, then if anything, on the way back up, you got to get out because support should become resistance. So, unfortunately, that is a psychological issue that I see a lot of traders go through where it's tougher for them to get out as the stock is moving up. Like, yeah, you're maybe, going break even or you're maybe just down a tiny amount now, but we all want more. We all want more, and that's the tough part because oftentimes we don't get more afterwards because we were down to begin with if the market's gapped on us overnight, and from there it leads to a sharper drop. You're left hoping again, and so like that's what happened today on a few different trades. Like my AMD, it gapped down overnight, closed so strong yesterday. Well, support became resistance. It was the closing bell print from yesterday on AMD that became resistance this morning, and look at where it is now. So, if anything, that's like the worst case scenario because you're working with an overnight gap. But otherwise, I mean, hey, if you jump into a trade and you get stopped out, easy for me to say maybe after doing this for 9+ years, but the more that you're with us, it's easier to accept defeat and just say, all right, didn't get that trade today. Maybe I'll check in with it later, or hell, maybe I'll check in with it tomorrow. We all know September is a very poor month historically in terms of performance. So, whether it be the end of this month or straight up at the very beginning of October next week, perhaps there could be a lot more to come on the way up here. My prediction was that we would see that bounce sooner than later, or at least heading into the end of this week. So I was not expecting as much of a drop today. Hopefully, we have a nice bounce into the close today and then some more tomorrow. But SLNO definitely beginning to drop off right now, breaking a lower low as we speak. So I may even scrap that from our list now at this point, as much as we wanted to, long that. Actually, a really good question coming in from Vincent on Facebook. Vincent asking about the SLNO. Would you short it? Well, actually, I brought that up earlier inside our live trading room. I'm going to give you the straight answer, Vincent, but join us inside our live trading room. Scan that QR code on the top left, get the full access and story behind this. But SLNO, I was saying earlier, we had a historical level before it got to 30, before 30. I was saying we had a historical level like at like 26 and change. So when it got to 26 and change, it was like kind of like right there, we'll say. It was like right where my cursor is. I'd said, okay, it's hard to borrow, and I don't think it was even optionable. I didn't check the options on this. I checked for the IMVT. That's right. So I didn't check the options on this, but I was saying it's hard to borrow, and if it was just more liquid, like if there was any more orders out there all in the book to show any semblance of big money, then I'd give it a whirl. I'd give it a go. But that's obviously make believe land when it's not possible to do that. So, I mentioned that just at the time, but it goes to show that it moved up higher after, and that's where I would have gotten stopped out. You can't really risk that trade any more than your entry price because, hey, as much as we say big trees fall hard, being on the wrong side of a short squeeze, you can get your account blown up. So the CCG before it dumped back down here, it topped off at where 118 bucks. So just it's to say that's not something we always hunt for because it's extremely risky, like too risky. Um, there's a time and a place, and if this was more liquid, it would have been like maybe possible, but uh, and even here now, like again, same to be said, like if it was more liquid, if it was on a better spread and actually easy to borrow, I mean, 30 is a psychological level. So, that would be pretty strong to focus on, right? Chuck saying BRFG pop. All right, that's one actually we said we'd get back to at the tail end of this meeting. Yeah, I mean, another little move up right there. I'm not fully sold. It's up over 27%, and it's at the VWAP right now. So that's not, those aren't bad signs. But for right now, I think I'll pass here. Let me check Benzinga Pro before we wrap up, and then I think that will just about call it a day here, folks. Join us again tomorrow on our webcast or in person if you're local, but more so at this point, given it's just less than 24 hours away. If you haven't signed up for our webcast yet, version of our on-site course in person, just make sure that you talk to your education advisor inside our office. They'll be able to get you signed up and get you connected with all the access come tomorrow morning. OMH here. Nah. All right, so when Benzinga's given me this, I think that's pretty much the signal, folks. Just lastly, from the loser side, I want to just check in. Not looking too bad as a short XPEV. Neo's not going much of anywhere. The Lee trade, not really doing much either. Just gonna kind of skim through at this point, just go through any other side list stocks that we've kind of called out in the past or have traded of late. All kind of making the same direction here for the most part with the market, but I wanted to see if there was anything really tanking, really dropping off pretty nicely. Getting back to Rivian, in the event where the markets hold up and bounce into the close like a tiny bounce, then that can go a long way for a stock like Rivian here. So I will add Rivian to our main list here at the end. At this point, why not? All right. So, folks, we're going to call it. I'm going to jump off the mic right now. Rich will be on in about 10 or so minutes inside our live trading room. So, stay tuned for that. Best of luck trading going into the market close. If you're joining us local tomorrow, hey, get ready, folks. Get ready and be up early. I'm going to be there probably at like 7:30 in the morning. Prep up, just be good to go myself. Make sure all of us on the webcast are good to go by 8 o'clock Eastern time. Again, if you're joining us on webcast version, I'll look to have everything set up by 8 o'clock Eastern time pre-market. It's very quiet at that point, so nothing special really happening just yet. But if you wanted to get in on the chat, join us early there. We'll begin that by 8 o'clock. All right, folks. But hey, best of luck trading going into this afternoon and catch up with everybody soon. Take care.